Chairman. Homelessness of any state in the country. The Department of Housing and Urban Development reported that on a single night in 2008, a total of 157,277 homeless persons were living on the streets or in shelters. During the course of each year, over 380,000 people are homeless for some period of time in California. This means that each year in this state, 1 out of every 95 residents will experience a brief or extended period of homelessness at some point, many of them suffering from some form of mental illness. In California, 70% of homeless people live unsheltered, the largest percentage in the nation. There is a clear need for more construction to ease the problem, but due to many factors, these projects are quickly priced out of ever becoming a reality. For the record, I am accepting the committee amendments here this afternoon. Mr. Chair, I would like to thank you, and I would like to thank committee staff for working diligently with my office to come to a resolution on issues with the amendments. My staff also worked very hard to offer many suggestions to address the concerns of the State Building and Construction Trades Council to resolve their issues with the bill, and I really want to thank and recognize them. It's my understanding they'll be testifying this afternoon regarding the removal of their opposition, so I want to publicly thank them as well. With the committee's help, we have identified an existing route for local governments to identify zones for emergency shelters in their general plan housing element, which itself is subject to a planning level environmental review, to allow projects in those zones to be more easily approved without a discretionary permit or lengthy review. The amendments before you give cities and counties the option to also identify zones for supportive and transitional housing in order to receive the same benefits as emergency shelters should they elect to do so. The provisions of this bill will also support the purposes and intent of the Senate's newly announced No Place Like Home initiative. With the mentally ill in particular, many homeless advocates and social service experts across the state prefer a housing-first strategy because safe and secure housing creates an environment that allows for wraparound services, such as mental health treatment, to take hold. The additional supportive and transitional housing this bill could lead to will go a long way towards helping those most in need to get back on their feet. Some of the goals include empowering local governments with additional resources and flexibility to better serve homeless individuals and families, and extend proven programs for homeless who are either disabled or in need of mental health assistance. I think AB 1500 is in line with those goals and will only serve to increase the impact of these initiative proposals. I thank you very much for allowing me to present here today, and I would respectfully ask for your aye vote.
And just so I want to help explain the amendments. Before I do that, we do have a quorum. So has the bill been moved? The bill has not been moved, but we have not yet established a quorum. So please, please let's take roll.
Williams.
Here.
Daly.
Here.
Bonta.
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Harper.
Present.
McCarty.
Here.
Stone.
Here.
Wood.
Move the bill.
There has been a move and a second, but first I'd like to call to order the Assembly Natural Resources Committee. There's been a move, but not yet a second. Is there a second? Second, and this is, the motion is aye as amended. And I will explain the amendments. We felt strongly that this did not, that this is a meritorious issue that you brought to us, but did not need a CEQA exemption because we have processes in place where a given jurisdiction, by simply doing environmental review as part of their planning document, can include the possible impacts that would take place from a shelter, and that there is existing law, SB 2 by Cedillo back in 2007, to give that treatment to emergency shelters, and felt that this was in line with that. And so the amendments would instead allow transitional and supportive housing the same treatment that emergency shelters have, where cities and counties designate zones in their general plan housing element where emergency shelters can be permitted without a discretionary permit. And many of you that have been in local government have probably dealt with these kinds of situations in the past. And environmental review does go through in a housing element review and in a general plan update. Any questions? Let's have witnesses in support.
Marina Wyatt with the California Housing Consortium. We represent members of the development, building, financial, and public sectors united in their mission to produce and preserve affordable housing throughout the state. As many of you know, we're in a vast housing affordability crisis here in California, and as we have more and more diminishing federal, state, and local dollars going into affordable housing development, we're constantly looking at ways to streamline and make the building of these developments more cost efficient. In LAO's housing cost study last year, they identified CEQA as one of the cost drivers that impede development of housing, specifically low-income housing. Our members are very supportive of the principles behind CEQA. We consistently build environmentally friendly projects. As you know, the cap and trade dollars is going to help support transit-oriented development because these low-income housing developments near transit have been identified as greenhouse gas reducers. And as previously mentioned, Housing Element does review the environmental impacts of many of these projects already. Unfortunately, we see opportunities where members of the community use CEQA to block some of these necessary affordable housing developments. And we do already have many CEQA exemptions for affordable housing, and so we're hopeful that this exemption that's so narrowly tailored to special needs and transitional housing will meet many of the community's goals. So we are in strong support of AB 1500.
Mr. Chair, members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I want to thank the author and his staff, you, the chair, and your staff as well, for working with us and finding the actual solution to actually address this issue. Our unions are very strong supporters of CEQA. This committee has been very helpful in that respect to protecting the environment, but also the workforce and economic benefits that it can attract as well. We believe this bill, as narrowly tailored, will address a very significant problem I think that the legislature is trying to tackle. It's not only an issue for the very low income, but it's also middle income families that are seeing rents go high and their paychecks not go as far. We would like to say in our comments that as you're looking to address these issues, look at the underlying factors as well to create high quality career opportunities for these individuals with that investment. So it's not only just addressing the housing issue, but also ensuring that there's going to be an opportunity for those individuals to get out of poverty as well. So we thank you and support this bill.
Kyle Jones with Sierra Club, California, and on behalf of Jenna Price of CLCV, would like to remove our opposition with the proposed amendments and look forward to seeing them in print. And just wanted to thank the author and committee staff for working together to find a great solution. Thanks.
Nicole Wertelman on behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors, also in support.
Witnesses in opposition? Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Stone.
Mr. Mainstein, thank you for addressing this issue. And like you, I served in local government. We worked really pretty hard on transitional housing, on the kinds of projects that would come under your bill. And I was very concerned about it when it was a CEQA exemption. And I still remain a little bit concerned that while I completely agree with you that we need to find ways to make sure we're doing a much better job of getting actual affordable housing built, transitional housing, all of those components, homeless shelters in our communities, we also have to always be very careful if we're short-circuiting the public review process, which is what one of the hallmarks of CEQA is that it stands up for. And I know people complain about it, but also having, because it's sort of an easy shot to take, but having been through that process a number of times, it takes a bit of time, but also ensures that that jurisdiction is doing the prep work with the community and really involving the stakeholders in a productive way. That's the way to most successfully work within the CEQA process. And there are some times when CEQA is used in ways that frustrate the public process, but that's actually a very small perspective. I think knowing you and knowing where your heart is, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt on this one and support you on this, but watch it carefully, because again, I completely support your goals, but I think we have to be very careful when we're working with anything that's going to take the community out of its ability to articulate, and that's good and that's bad, and I realize that, but we have to be careful about it. So I appreciate the steps that you've taken, the amendments that you have taken to get it out of that inflammatory arena, if you will, of CEQA exemptions, and work with us in the housing arena where it belongs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stone.
Mr. McCarty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I support this and the solution. I wasn't here a couple years ago when they talked about this CEQA reform. I know the governor at the time called it God's work to take a look at. The whole exemptions I'm not for, but I do think that, like you, Mr. Stone, having served as a council member for 10 years, like you as well, I don't agree with the analysis. They say here that OPR says that infill, that CEQA is not a barrier. That hasn't been my experience. I've talked to people locally, had a roundtable over the break, and just talked about a few examples. So I do think this is a conversation we need to keep having to mend it, don't end it, and look for innovative ways to modernize it potentially that makes sense, so we could all get our hands around. So support this. Just want to make an overview comment going forward.
Thank you, Mr. McCarty.
Comments or questions from members? There has been a motion and a second. Would you like to close?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to thank you. I want to thank committee staff. I want to thank Mr. Diaz, who we spent a lot of time working with, and he was very gracious and helping us to try to find solutions. Mr. Stone, I appreciate your comments. I know this is I know where your heart is on this issue too. So I know I really appreciate the spirit in which you've extended me those comments and that courtesy. So I want to say thank you personally, Mr. McCarty. Thank you for your questions as well. As somebody who's spent a significant portion of my professional career, working specifically on getting the different types of housing built for all these different, for the severely mentally ill, for the transitional housing, for the supportive service. It's a complicated issue. It's not just CEQA that is an issue. There's NIMBYism. There's probably 20 different issues we could sit here and talk about. But I do think this is a step in the right direction, particularly this year, as it seems to be gaining focus here up here in Sacramento with the Assembly and with the Senate. Homelessness, without question, aggravates mental illness, and so making it more difficult to reach and house those with the greatest need of shelter and treatment makes that even more problematic. So I really want to thank the committee here today, and I'd respectfully request an aye vote.
Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended and re-refer to appropriations. Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. Daly?
Aye.
Daly, aye. Bonta?
Aye.
Bonta, aye. Garcia?
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Hadley?
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper?
Aye.
Harper, aye. McCarty?
Aye.
McCarty, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wood?
Aye.
Wood, aye.
Your bill is out.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
I think we have Mr. Gordon up next. A brief comments, perhaps.
It might be appropriate. Thank you for the motion and the second. Let me just simply say that this has been a successful program, and the opportunity to extend it, I think, is an important one. Since introducing this, I have had input from stakeholders and from Cal Recycle, and I want to be very clear with the committee. There may be some additional tweaks that will be helpful to the program that we will consider if this bill moves forward. And I want to make a pledge today that if there is significant changes, I would pledge to bring the bill back to committee. But there's some enhancements that Cal Recycle in particular thinks might be helpful. But if we move this forward today, it allows me to continue those discussions and to work to improve what I think has been a great program. So with that, I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Witnesses in support?
Mark Murray with Californians Against Waste, strongly in support, concur that this is starting the conversation about how this program, as it's extended, we need to talk about some of the details of that, and we're very open to that. Glad to see all elements of the industry here today supporting.
Paula Treat on behalf of the California Plastics Recyclers Coalition. I'm sorry I didn't get notes of support off to all of you, but then I haven't even taken my tree down yet. So what my clients do, that they're reclaimers / recyclers, and they take bales of used bottles and then plastic bottles, and then they take them, they clean them, then disinfect them, they make them into flakes and pellets, of which then are made into maybe a clamshell you find at Costco in a salad, or naked juice, which is 100% recycled plastic. This program is going to further help California green jobs stay in California versus exporting those bales.
Mr. Chairman and members, Ralph Simoni representing the California Nevada Beverage Association and also the Plastic Recycling Corporation of California. Both of those entities are in favor of the bill. You know, when you step back from this bill, and I address the PET resin plastic, there's 7.2 billion containers that were collected in 2014. It's not enough just to collect those containers. They have to have a home. They have to find productive secondary uses. And when this program first started, a lot of that happened offshore. In the last 8 to 10 to 12 years, we've developed a domestic reclaimer market, and the PMD program, of which this extends the sunset, is nurturing that program and helping support it. So this is a very important bill. And as to the reforms that Mr. Gordon mentioned and the consultant mentioned at item 3, we want to make sure that these funds, which are basically grants, are going to folks that are actually taking California material, converting it here in California for productive secondary uses. Thank you.
Comments or questions from the committee? I do want to say that this bill does provide an opportunity to look at ways the program can be improved. And of course, better make sure that tree doesn't end up in a landfill. And so no witnesses in opposition, no comments from the committee. Chair's recommendation is aye. Please call the roll. Oh, would you like to close?
Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you.
The motion is due pass and refer to appropriations. Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. Dowley?
Aye.
Dowley, aye. Bonta?
Aye.
Bonta, aye. Garcia?
Aye.
Garcia, aye. Hadley, sorry.
Aye.
Hadley, aye. Harper?
Aye.
Harper, aye. McCarty?
Aye.
McCarty, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Wood?
Aye.
Wood, aye.
Thank you.
The bill is out. Mr. Salas. Also, an announcement that AB 729 by Atkins was pulled.
Great.
Mr. Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present, I think, the last item on your agenda then. First, let me just first off thank you, Mr. Williams. I know we met last week with you and your committee staff, so I am prepared to accept the amendment striking the set-aside and your suggested technical and clarifying changes as well. AB 1336 would establish the Community Climate Improvement Program to develop and administer grants that would enrich disadvantaged communities and provide significant climate benefits. Pollution, as you know, is pervasive not only in my district, but throughout several communities throughout the entire state, including the Central Valley. There is an urgent need to develop a framework better suited to encourage participation of disadvantaged communities. This bill will help facilitate projects that promote regional coordination and multiple GHG reduction efforts. And I'm happy to say that we have several folks here that will testify in support of some of those programs as well. Coordination and collaboration in GHG reduction efforts is crucial, particularly to service providers in disadvantaged communities that often don't have the resources to go it alone. And with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Move the bill to committee now. Second.
A motion and a second. Witnesses in support.
I'm Tom Knox of Valley Clean Air Now. In the last 6 months, we've really seen GGRF work in the Valley. We've been able to replace 290 vehicles with new plug-in models and hybrids. A lot of the success of GGRF in the Valley is due to the cooperation in between all the service providers. By being able to stack programs, we think we multiply the benefit of GGRF programs in these homes. For example, we can do solar and an electric vehicle in a house. That resident is going to save $300, maybe $400 per month on both their utilities and their transportation. So there's a huge amount of benefit in doing this. It's also much more cost effective to do as much as we can in low-income homes once we're in there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Demers. I'm the Executive Director of the Sacramento Regional Conservation Corps, and I'm here on behalf of CALC, the California Association of Local Corps. We obviously know firsthand, working with these disadvantaged communities and young men and women from these communities, the needs and the environmental and employment needs that exist within the communities. This bill will help us in three specific areas. Number one, it will provide meaningful job opportunities. Like other corps throughout the state, we currently have over 100 young men and women that are currently trained and ready to work on projects that will help with greenhouse gas reductions. Additionally, this bill will ensure that climate investments provide strong employment benefits to ensure to the underserved California communities and provide meaningful employment opportunities to the most vulnerable residents of our state. Number two, this will promote regional collaboration and implementation. By creating a grant program administered by the Strategic Growth Council, this bill will streamline the process for applicants to access funds and allow for increased uptake of regional projects. Regional projects allow for collaboration and participation by communities that do not have the resources or expertise to apply for funding, and encourage multi-element, multi-benefit projects that are only possible when expanding project areas. And number three, to advance projects that create greenhouse gas emissions and reductions. AB 1336 maximizes the diversity of projects needed to reach our climate goals. We need to integrate new multi-benefit projects that are proven to reduce greenhouse gases, and carbon sequestration and urban greening projects provide many benefits that are proven to reduce greenhouse gases. Recently, Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, has recognized the greenhouse gas benefits associated with plant and soil conservation, including increased biomass, carbon sequestration, and soil carbon stocks. And last year, this committee passed AB 1205, Assemblymember Gomez's Cal River bill that recognized the climate-positive greenhouse gas reducing elements of many of these same projects. For these reasons, we respectfully request an aye vote, and thank you very much.
Chair and members, Reed Addis on behalf of Fresno EOC. Happy New Year. We're in support today. We had the privilege of working on a pilot program here in the state that was funded by GGRF to allow the installation of rooftop solar in disadvantaged communities. That funding has expired. We hope that there will be more funding in the future, but we did learn from that process that at a household and community level, we could work with other organizations, some of which are maybe here today, to do better delivery at these households. Instead of having somebody run through 4 or 5, 6 different application processes, we can actually combine our efforts and maximize the number of benefits going to each community and each household. So for that reason, we think this program incentivizes that activity, and we're in support. Thank you.
Sylvia Solis on behalf of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. We support the Assembly members' efforts to bring these much needed funds to the most disadvantaged communities in the state. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members. Bill McGavin with the Coalition for Clean Air. We haven't seen the amendments, but we do agree with the removal of the regional carve-out. And so with that, we certainly support the bill in concept. Look forward to seeing the language of the amendments. We were the sponsors of SB 535, which was signed into law in 2012, guaranteeing that some of the money raised by California's climate programs goes to the most disadvantaged communities in the state. And we always have looked forward to the possibility that multiple programs with multiple benefits could be focused on some of the most disadvantaged communities to really have a transformative effect on those communities. And we think that's what this bill is trying to do. So we support that. We're starting to see the beginnings of that with the efforts in San Joaquin Valley, where low-income people are able to get a plug-in vehicle and then get solar on their roof so that they're plugging into 100% clean electricity. And that's the kind of multiple benefits we'd really like to see. So we hope this bill does move forward.
I would just add that programs like that are encouraging. I think, parts of the state like your own, Mr. Salas, that where low-income communities live still largely in single-family homes, so that they have the ability to plug in very easily, are ideal for electric vehicle promulgation, especially given the high level of air pollutants and the lack of transit options in some parts of the state. So I think those kinds of programs are great. Again, we not wanted to have regional carve-outs, but criteria-based allocation, and with that, the chair's recommendation is aye. Questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Dolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you bringing this bill forward. I have a lot of the same issues in my district. There's one place I have some difficulty, and that is to ensure all ancillary elements of the project development and implementation are eligible for funding. The ancillary elements may not, though, be in line with the climate change goals. So you're basically saying they're going to be funded, and that's something I'm a little bit concerned about. That's the one area that I'm having a problem with this bill. I don't know if you addressed that in any of your talks with the chairman or the amendments earlier.
More than happy to work with you on that, Mr. Daly. As you know, even the measures we worked on last year together, the ancillary elements that we're actually talking about are things that help reduce the GHG reduction in the entire area. We're really looking at the regional. It was mentioned earlier that if you have solar on your rooftop, we all see that as a recognized benefit, in addition to not only having a plug-in or a hybrid, right? You see that added benefit, right? So it's multi-benefit. But if we need to strengthen that language moving forward so that you feel comfortable, willing to, and committed to work on that with you.
And I must be a little rusty as chairman after a few months without a committee hearing, because I did not ask for opposition comments from opposition. Please come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Committee. Amy Mago on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce in opposition. Cal Chamber supports the cost-effective implementation of AB 32. The decision of the Air Resources Board to arbitrarily withhold and sell allowances will raise billions of dollars from taxpayers, which runs contrary to the express goals of AB 32, which is to maximize benefits and minimize leakage risks and costs. Cal Chamber has long held CARB does not have the authority to raise revenue through the auctioning of allowances, and given the substantial legal uncertainty surrounding that auction, we must oppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Ms. Garcia.
Thank you. I want to thank the author for removing it and making it specific, not making it about just San Joaquin County anymore. I deal with a lot of the same issues in my backyard. And I do think we need to be thinking about regional efforts, collaboration, and the multiplier effect that you are discussing as we're looking at this. And I do believe we need more than the carve-out we got, SB 535, so I think you're starting to push the envelope in that direction. But as we move forward, I hope you're going to be thinking about how do we create a level playing field between these regions and the cities. I live in the shadow of the city of LA. I have 9 small cities that can't compete with the city of LA. And so the city of LA does have a lot of disadvantaged communities, and they get to go after these funds. But the reality that they have way more resources to go after it. So by the time my communities get it together, right, the well's a little bit dry. And so I hope that as this move forward, to work with you to find that middle ground. We should not punish the city of LA for the resources they have, but we should make sure our other cities are at a level playing field.
Correct. And we're hoping to address some of that with the regional approaches as our smaller cities, or even in my area in rural areas, like the vice chair, that they could bring their resources together so that they can be at a more equal playing field when it's going after these resources.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to close?
Just let me just say this is more of a holistic approach to have a regional difference, and with that I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended and re-referred to appropriations. Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. Daly?
Aye.
Daly, aye. Bonta? Aye. Bonta, aye. Garcia? Aye. Garcia, aye. Hadley? Aye. Hadley, aye. Harper?
No.
Harper, no. McCarty? Aye. McCarty, aye. Stone? Aye. Stone, aye. Wood? Aye. Wood, aye.
And I'd like to make note that we are joined by a new member. We have Lost a treasured member that moves on to bigger and better things as speaker, but we are replaced ably by Mr. Rob Bonta from Alameda and Oakland. Please welcome Mr. Bonta. Okay. With that, we will bring this meeting of the Assembly Natural Resources Committee to a close. Oh, did anybody miss a vote?